Emergency. Catherine Herridge is outside the spot where they just held the news conference. Catherine, it sounds like our intrepid reporters are getting a lot more information than police are releasing at the microphones, though that's not really that unusual.
No, it's pretty typical in a situation like this. You've been in them yourself, Shepard. The main headline so far is what we've been reporting throughout the afternoon is that the working theory of the police and also federal law enforcement is that it was a lone gunman, that he entered the museum, brandishing the rifle, began shooting immediately. A couple of other points I want to emphasize, which may not be obvious to people who don't follow the law enforcement beat. What we heard from the FBI chief at that news conference is that they had no prior warnings or indications that there was a threat to the museum. I had heard that from another contact separately earlier this afternoon, and that's significant because, once again, it points to the picture of a lone wolf gunman in this case. Now, right now, we're getting some information, and this could be very significant information, Shepard, about a car that was parked right in the front entrance of the Holocaust Museum. We have some video of that car we're going to try and feed to you shortly. Looks like a small red compact, and the way the police are behaving around that car and trying to keep us away from the car, we believe that may be the car of the suspect in this case. And it would appear that he drove right up near to the front of the museum, stopped the car, literally got out, and walked out with a weapon. And as you can expect, it's the same thing in New York City and in any city in the United States right now. When you have a museum, a big federal building, or government building, you cannot park within a certain area of the front entrance, often for security reasons. So if that's the case, that may be a lapse in the security in this particular situation, if he was able to drive up and get out. If he were able to do that, it would in fact be a lapse in security. I guess what you're saying is we're not 100% sure, but that's kind of how it looks. Well, we're not, we don't have confirmation, and we don't want to get out too far. We don't have confirmation it's his car. But what we do know is that when we started shooting this car, and it's one of the few cars in the area, that the police were pushing us back from this site, keeping us away from the car, which would indicate to me from my experience that they may think that it is a piece of evidence in the case. The fact that it's parked right at the entrance, near the entrance of the museum, is also significant to me because in this city you just can't do that. You can't drive up to a big federal building, a museum, drop your car, and then start walking in. But again, we don't know if it's the shooter's car, but the police in that area are behaving like it could be a very important piece of evidence in this particular crime. And you know, Catherine, for the second time in as many weeks, a crime scene reminds me of a memo which you broke on the Fox report from the government warning, look out for crazy extremists out there about to go do weirdness, and here we are. Well, this is an excellent point to bring up because I think we have to now see those two intelligence assessments that were released by Homeland Security earlier this year. One dealt with left-wing extremists, the other dealt with right-wing extremists. You have to see them in a somewhat different light. It would appear, and I emphasize appear, based on the evidence that it's available to us, is that it does seem to be the act of an individual who had extremist views. And if it is indeed Von Brunn, someone who did have a military history, and as you remember, that was the element of the right-wing intelligence assessment, which was so controversial, and there was a lot of blowback on Homeland Security for that assessment. Yeah, there was blowback, and here we are. Catherine Herridge, good of you. Thanks. I've learned a little bit more about Von Brunn, and a quick search of the Internet, and you could too. He holds a Bachelor of Science in, well, this is according to his website. This is his bio on his website. So can I independently confirm the following? No. But this is supposedly his deal. James Von Brunn holds a Bachelor of Science in Journalism degree from Midwestern University, where he was president of Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity and played varsity football. During World War II, he served as a PT boat captain, lieutenant in the United States Naval Reserve, got a commendation and 4 battle stars. For 20 years, he was an advertising executive and film producer in New York City. He's a member of Mensa, the High IQ Society. A Mensa. Back to the 1981 thing. I've told you about how he went into the Treasury. The Board of Governors for the Fed were meeting, and he wanted to go in and take some pictures and said this stuff and pulled out a gun and ended up spending 6.5 years in prison. Here's how he looks back upon those events. In 1981, he attempted to place the treasonous Federal Reserve Board of Governors under legal nonviolent citizen's arrest. He was tried in Washington. Again, this is his assessment of his crime at the time.
He was tried in Washington, D.C. Superior Court, convicted by a Negro jury, Jew Negro attorneys, and sentenced to prison for 11 years by a Jew judge. It's a happy man. And then it says, a Jew Negro white court of appeals denied the appeal. He served 6.5 years in prison, and apparently, if all of today's information pans out, not nearly long enough. Our live resources have fanned across Washington. One of your questions may be, okay, there was a shooting in Washington, D.C. A couple people got hit. This was at the Holocaust Museum. Mike Baker, a lot of hate kicking around these days. Been a lot of hate since this president came into office. He has been a uniting figure in so many ways. He has brought the youth of America together in so many ways. He has been inspirational for so many people. Yet there are a lot of people who have very, very difficult problems with an African-American man, and as the president, and now people want to talk about, what was he even an American citizen? Where's his birth certificate? That needs to stop. I mean, it's preposterous, and now I'm going to get emails again, and he's a Muslim, which isn't true, and the level of the hate being ratcheted up from so many different quarters, from so many different websites, and otherwise for that matter. It sometimes feels like it's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, it does. And I read a column for FoxNews.com, and the responses very quickly veer off sometimes into exactly what you said, this bizarre world of is the president even a U.S. citizen? Or there's an element out there, and it shouldn't be discounted. But there is an element out there that is for whatever reason, just very, very disturbed, very unhappy. I think, again, the economy is an issue that tends to agitate that. Certainly, President Obama and the fact that he's in, and some people, a decided minority, are having trouble dealing with that. But you look at something like this in an event like today, the man obviously had problems for some period of time, and then something snapped in him, and he went out and he committed this act. Again, no matter what you do, no matter how you're monitoring individuals, being able to prevent that, it's just not that possible. And I'm sure that there'll be a review of the security arrangements. There'll be a review of how security responded inside the museum. By all accounts, they did an extremely good job. They responded very quickly to the incident as it unfolded. You can tell from the witnesses, something that's interesting in any incident like this is trying to get eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
You can see how varied they can be.
Always.
And people come and oftentimes all they recognize is the gun. Well, tell us about the shooter. Well, it was a big gun. Well,
big gun. Sometimes it's a handgun.
Sometimes it's a handgun.
Yeah.
So it can be very difficult. But the guards, by all accounts, reacted very, very professionally.
We got this warning from Homeland Security, and at the time, the right went absolutely bonkers. I mean, the wording on it, they've all come back and said our wording should have been better on that. That was a little weird. But now, like Savannah Stover has just written me from Colorado. Shame on you and Catherine Herridge for perpetrating the obscene Department of Homeland Security report on military extremists. Shame on you. This is a former military guy, and he's gone extremist. They were warning us for a reason, not about something political or social or anything else, except they see signs that this sort of thing is bubbling up. They saw the signs, and now it has begun. I just wonder if there's really a way to put a hold on it. Maybe sending out it's like when they used to raise the threat level in the United States. Oh, we've gone to code red. I'm like, so what does this make me do? Do I put double bolts on the lock when I go in to use the bathroom? You don't really change anything. But this warning, as it turns out, there was something to it. It was not obscene by the Department of Homeland Security, Savannah Stover in Colorado. It was a warning to us all, and it appears now that they were right.
And it was simply pointing out the possibilities. And that report had been requested a significant amount of time prior to its release. And you're right, it was incredibly emotive. Again, by a small group of, I think, that came out and said, oh my God, how can you? Well, all they're doing is what they're tasked with doing, examining all the various possibilities. And someone like Von Braun falls into a distinct possibility on the domestic side, and we have to be aware of that. But it's clearly it's an emotive subject. There's no doubt about that. It's just that again, we have an issue in this country right now when it comes to national security, and there is a tendency for us to allow the events of the past, as difficult as that is to say, and some people say, well, we'll never forget 9/11. Well, we see it in our attitudes towards increased security sometimes. I've sat, and I'm sure you've done the same thing. You're in line at the airport. People are complaining about security.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe I got to take my shoes off still.
Yeah.
Well, think back, and then you look at an incident like this.
Yeah. And you know, but I do understand that, because some of the things they make us do are preposterous, and they later come back and say, that was more to make you feel better. You don't have to do that anymore. But you're spot on.